We'll get started. Welcome to the Wednesday, July 8th, 2020 electronic meeting of the Ann Arbor Design Review Board. This meeting is in accordance with orders to affect social distancing and mitigate the spread of the COVID-19 virus. We intend to conduct this meeting similarly to an in-person meeting. However, please be patient as there are technical issues. Public comment will be by telephone only. To speak during either of the two public comment opportunities, please call 888-788-0099, which is a toll-free number, and enter the meeting ID 912-5426-1114. This information is also available on the published agenda and in the public notice section of the city website, and on the broadcast of this meeting on CTN channel 16, AT&T channel 99, and online at www.a2gov.org/watch-CTN. So let me give you those numbers one more time. The number to call for public comment is 888-788-0099, and then enter the meeting ID of 912-5426-1114. Going on with my script. The Design Review Board is a volunteer resident board appointed by the mayor and confirmed by City Council. The purpose of the Design Review Board is to foster excellence in the design of Ann Arbor's built environment and to advise applicants on how a project can meet the spirit and the intent of the downtown design guidelines. And with the way we'll conduct the meeting, and after we get through roll call and other business, the applicant will have 10 minutes to present the proposed project to the Design Review Board. The Design Review Board will then hold a discussion on the design of the project. And we are injecting a new thing starting with this meeting. We have realized that there can be lag time between our meetings and the following meeting, and we do not get approved minutes to the applicants quickly enough. So at the close of our commentary, Jeff Kahan is going to be our note taker, and he is going to list for us the items that we talked about. And then we may have another discussion about which of those are most important to us. So the goal, Diane and Sean, is to send you away from this meeting knowing what we said, so you don't have to wait in case we don't meet for 3 months for our approved minutes. So you're our guinea pigs. This is the first time we've tried this, so you'll have to bear with us at the end of the meeting. And it's time for roll call. Jeff, could you take roll call? I think you're on mute.
Here we go. Tamara Burns.
Here.
Gary Cooper.
Here.
Lori Singleton.
Here.
Bill Kinley.
Here.
Dick Mitchell.
Here.
Jeff Perkins. Thought I saw Jeff.
He's down there. Oh, he's on mute.
Okay.
Sorry. I'm here.
Okay. Corey Buckwalter.
Here.
John Kotarski.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Good, thank you. The next item is to approve the agenda. Is there anything anyone would like to add or move around? I don't see any hands. Could someone please move that the agenda be approved?
Motion to approve.
That's Jeff, and second
Second.
from Tamara. Any more discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you. The next item is the approval of minutes from our last meeting, which goes all the way back to December 11th, which everyone has received. This was the meeting when we looked at the credit union at Washington and Division. Any revisions or suggested changes to those minutes?
No.
I don't see any hands. Would someone like to move approval, please?
Motion to approve.
Jeff and Bill second. Any more discussion on the minutes? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Now, our first public comment, and this is the public commentary for items that are not on the agenda. So I'm going to read these instructions and phone numbers again. This is an opportunity for persons to speak for up to 3 minutes. To comment, please call 888-788-0099 and enter the meeting ID number of 912-5426-1114. City staff will select callers that have, quote, raised their hand, end quote, one by one, using the last 3 digits of their phone number. In order to electronically raise your hand to indicate your desire to speak, please press *9 on your phone. You will hear an automated announcement that the host is allowing you to speak. When speaking, please move to a quiet area and mute any television or background sounds so that we may hear you clearly. Please state your name and address at the beginning of your comments. So I'm looking in Kristen Square now. Has anyone called in?
There are no callers at this time. Let's give it just a little bit, just in case anyone's trying to get in here.
Okay. This is when the Double Jeopardy song should be playing in the background.
All right.
Oh, John?
I lost power in part of the house. I've got to just go down and click some breakers. I'll be right back.
Okay. We still have a quorum, so we'll carry on.
And there are no callers at this time, so
Okay. So we'll close the first of 2 public commentaries. Before we bring the petitioner on, I thought I would give our city planning staff an opportunity to summarize the project. Jeff?
Thanks, Dick. All of you should have received the staff report for Vic Village South. It includes a history, proposed project, the usual items. Just in summary, this project came before you starting in March of 2019 for a 13-story tower on this location. They came back to show you their revised version a few months later. But in the spring of 2020, they decided to go with a new concept, which is a much shorter version, this time a 6-story version. So today we're reviewing this as if it were a new project, in this case, a 6-story version. You'll notice many similarities. The site is, the footprint is essentially very similar. The staff report talked a little bit about some of the changes. For instance, there's no access drive anymore from the west side of the site. But that's just a quick summary of the staff report, and I'm sure the design team will be happy to summarize and provide some of the detail of their petition.
Great. Okay, Sean and Diane, this is your opportunity.
So thank you again for meeting with us this afternoon. Sean Arbor with Hughes Properties. We are the developer for the Vic Village South project. So we are coming back with a new concept for the planning or for the site of the project. So we did bring it down to 6 stories. We did, as Jeff alluded to, we did get rid of the underground parking. And so I'm going to hand it over to Diane to go ahead and go through the plans. And then obviously we'll be available to answer any questions.
There we go. Hi, everyone, and it's very good to see everyone. I hope you can hear me. And I am looking at a screen with our design review board presentation. My name is Diane McIntyre. I'm with Hobbs and Black Architects, working with Hughes Properties and Sean Havera on the Vic Village South project. So as Jeff said, and as you can see here, we are on South University Avenue. We are directly across from the new Vic Village North building, which is the sister to this building that was just completed last year in the D1 zoning district, South University Character Overlay District. And also, as Jeff mentioned, I see a lot of familiar faces, and this project may look familiar to some of you, as we were here last year with a 13-story version of this building. A lot of the elements are the same in terms of it's still the same building footprint, mostly still retail commercial at first floor and residential living units above, just a much smaller version in terms of height. And the other main difference between our previous submission and this one is the elimination of the 2 stories of below grade parking that were in the previous version of the building. Whereas this design is within the 400% FAR maximum, not utilizing any of the FAR premiums that were available before, like the residential premium. So a few basic facts. As we said, 6-story building. We're looking at about 37 living units in this building, which totals around 123 beds, if I remember correctly. Predominantly 3 and 4 bedroom living units. And as we move forward, I have to thank Kristen for being my assistant here and turning the pages for me. We can go to the next slide. This gives you an idea of the context of the site. Obviously, South University Avenue, and we are framed on both sides by East University Avenue and Church Street. You can see where the letter A is where the Good Time Charlie's BTB Cantina is located, and they will be staying there. And then on the west side of the site is the PNC building. And there were several smaller businesses in between those 2 bookends. If you remember, Oasis Grill, Underground Printing, they both moved across the street. And then I believe Hookah Lounge was still there, and South U Pizza. So that's basically the site area that we're looking at. The other thing to notice here is we're predominantly in an area with university buildings. We still have some commercial buildings, and you can move forward to the next slide. This shows the massing a little bit better. And then also quite a few residential high-rise buildings with University Towers being the first and now being joined by many others, Landmark, Zaragon, Arbor Blue, etc. And we can move to the next slide. These are photos of the existing site context. So what you see here is obviously the Cantina building with the backdrop of the 611 residential high-rise project that will be in our background as well. And then also the other corner showing the PNC building. And as we move forward, next slide, more examples of the university buildings that are nearby and other residential high-rises. And then the next slide, we have a lot of photos. Some of the newer high-rises again, and then some of the older, more eclectic architecture that still exists on Church Street, for example. And the next slide. Again, a mixture of the high-rises, the 1 and 2 story existing buildings that really dominated South University Avenue for quite some time. And then some photos of the new Oasis Grill and a smaller residential building over there, building at picture K. I think that's it for relevant photos. If we go to the next slide. So the site plan, as you can see, we're proposing basically to build all the way out to the property lines at the north and west of the site, which is along South University Avenue and East University Avenue, but then pulling back from the south portion of the property line to create both vehicular access on the east side coming in from Church Street, but also pedestrian access coming in off of East University Avenue. So the idea is, the intent is not to create a vehicular cut through for everyone, but to make sure that this is usable by pedestrians and also giving the pedestrians more options for entering the building. And if you go to the next slide, the site plan again, but with an overlay of site logistics, which shows that the vehicular access on the south is where you'll also see kind of tucked in there some parking spaces. And I know that we're below the maximum FAR on this, but parking wasn't required, but we did include 3 spaces back here for management, but also for the idea that one of these could be used for food deliveries or rideshare vehicles that would arrive at the building, trying to take that traffic off of South University or East University and bringing it back here, and then connecting the lobby, which the main entrance of the building is on South University, but it connects through down to the southern portion where there's a secondary lobby that could be used as a pedestrian entry point or as a delivery entry point. And what's also noteworthy here as you move outwards and you see the red kind of hatched areas, that those are intended to be utilized by the new commercial retail tenants. They're existing loading zones, and they're utilized now by all of the surrounding businesses. So again, trying to take the load off of South University and having delivery vehicles stopped in the middle of the road, as we know happens, and have them utilize these loading zones and then have access to the building, not just from the main entries, but from these secondary entries along the south portion of the building. I think if we move to the next slide, I'll go through the floor plans quickly. Briefly, again, this is the basement plan. I know before we had 2 levels of below grade parking, so no parking anymore down here and no parking ramp leading downwards. So we're really just looking at building services at this point. Stormwater detention, pump rooms, gas rooms, all those good things. And then the first floor, the next slide, shows you how the first floor would be divided up with primarily commercial and retail tenants, with the option of combining those. I know that our previous version had the student entry kind of separating where tenant B and C would be. We're trying to keep the student entry as still a dominant design feature, but have it stand more on its own over to the east side of the building. You can also see the lobby going through from the main entry on South U down to the secondary entry. And a few points of interest down at the south, the vehicular access is a shared access way with the adjacent building. And then you'll see, for instance, our refuse discharge room kind of centrally located in the building, with the idea that the roll-up door there would allow the trash bins to be rolled out to a shared trash pickup area, the trash trucks using that vehicular access way to get to those bins, which is currently used right now by the existing adjacent residential high-rise building. You can also see the parking spaces, the south entry, and then there's just a lot of utilities back here and an enclosed generator room to minimize noise impacts. And the next slide. So the second through fifth floors are primarily residential living units with amenities. Being the location of the corner of South University and East University, you can imagine that this would be probably dominated by student housing and living residential tenants. So a lot of amenities being provided for them. Onto the third floor, again, residential living units. Fourth floor, residential living units. Fifth floor. Thank you, Kristen. And then if we move up to the sixth floor, what you'll notice here is a patio at the left side of the screen, the west side of the site. That would be an amenity patio for all of the residents that provide views of the campus. But as opposed to across the street at Vic Village North, where it was a patio that was open on three sides, this is taking the approach of enclosing the patio more so it could possibly used more of a year-round basis, but still providing those views and an adequate area to have patio events surrounded by the amenity spaces. So that is the floor plans. I think the next slide is the building section. No, it is the elevations. So I was going to go through the elevations quickly because I think the perspectives tell more of the story of the design of the building. But you can see here that it's primarily a masonry brick building with some use of metal panel and stone material. This is the view north elevation of South University Avenue. The student entry on the left of the screen, a 2-story high setback entry point, which complements but doesn't compete with the northwest corner of the building where you see the 2-story high stone openings in the building. If you go to the next slide, the south elevation along the alleyway, again, mostly wrapped with the masonry brick materials. And then the next slide, the west elevation along East University Avenue. Again, better to understand with the perspective views. And then the next slide of the east elevation. And this is where I keep saying it's a 6-story building, but over here on Church Street, we're really looking at more of a 2-story building right up on Church Street, which is actually the leasing office on the first floor and an amenity, perhaps fitness space on the second. And the rest of the building pushed back quite a bit to the background. And then the next slide, there's the section where you can see that it is a 6-story building for most of the building, but then a primarily 2-story building at the east side with a residential unit on top that probably would not be visible from street level, so it would appear as a 2-story building. And then the next slide. So here we're looking at the colors of the brick that we're proposing, not all brown, an ebony, a nutmeg, a lighter color brick. And then if we go to the next slide, here's your preview of the building as you exit the archway at the West Engineering Building. So you can start to see the northwest corner of our site and how that 2-story stoned entry arches are at the corner with the glass tower reaching up above that, flanked by brick buildings. And the next slide will actually show you a little better picture along East University Avenue. And you can actually see the new Vic Village North in the background there, the 12-story building. So we have the 2-story high street wall that does carry across the facade, But then what you'll see here and on the next slide is that we've used the materials, different brick colors to try to create a sense of different facade expressions. Thank you, Kristen. So that the buildings can start to look, even though it's one building, can start to look like they're articulated differently, and with the idea that you're creating design modules that help to really break down the mass of this long, tall building. And if we keep going to the next slide, you see a view along South University Avenue with the student entry predominantly on the left. And then 4 bays of narrower, taller windows in a lighter colored brick. And that lighter colored brick extends up to create the illusion of a separate building that may have been added at some time to the next building, which still has a lot of the same elements in terms of proportions and materials that can be harmonious with one another. But you do see that separation of the student entry versus the northwest corner kind of retail entry of the building. But then trying to keep some of the horizontal datum lines lined up, whether it's using an open frame metal canopy or awnings at some of the first floor windows. And then if we go to the next slide, you see the building overall, how the lighter color brick elements flank the more nutmeg and sienna color brick elements, and then the focal point with the stone 2-story archways and the glass tower element that pops up higher than the rest of the building. So I welcome any comments and questions and would love to hear from you all.
Thank you, Diane. Oh, good. There, everyone's back. I was going to say it's hard for me to see hands in the air because I have to keep scrolling, but you all just came back. Who would like to open up? There goes Lori. Okay, thank you.
I always have something to say. I wonder if it's okay for me to share a copy of the PDF with just some little markups that I have on it. Is that, now that we're in this format, is that legitimate or no?
Yeah.
Okay. We couldn't do that before. So let me try to share that content. Oops. It says we're not allowed to do that. So Kristen, is that not possible?
No, I'm not sure. I don't think that outside of host and co-host, if you want to,
I can just explain it. That's fine. But it would help to pull the plan set back up. And I think in general, while you're doing that, I appreciate the kind of the breakdown of the building into these kind of separate facades, and that they're done in a way that feels pretty authentic. They feel like they have nice reveals between them. It doesn't feel like just a kind of a different kind of brick slapped on next to a different kind of brick. They do feel distinctly different and well scaled. I think the place, and when I start to diagram out what those are, they're pretty clear coming along South University and the kind of first segment along East University, but the corner is the place where I kind of am having trouble resolving it visually. It feels like 2 buildings are overlapping each other. Go back to the last, I don't know which way you're going. You can stop. I want to see that corner, but closer in.
Probably the very last slide.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. So, I mean, here you can kind of see the kind of lighter gray brick building on the right, and the more terracotta color left of the corner on South University. And then the corner element kind of pops up and then overlaps this little piece of brick that feels like it's applied to that building. And that's where I feel like we're losing that kind of clarity. And I wonder if it's possible to actually, I would even appreciate having a relief from the brick and using simply metal panel in that upper portion to match the dark gray that you're, or the bronze or whatever that is that you're working with, and then even take then the cast stone and wrap it all the way around that corner. I know your uses inside are a little bit different from that, but it feels awkward to have that little tiny building on the corner because it's not really a tiny little building. And it would feel more proportionately comfortable if that whole section, you know, from the corner tower to the right to the lighter gray brick was all felt like one piece of architecture. Does that make sense?
Oh, it's difficult without being able to point at the screen.
I know, I'm trying,
But-
my doodles were very
Yeah.
helpful, but I don't think I can do any of
So
that
the
here.
brick piece on the left side of the glass tower, I believe, is the first comment. Or,
Yeah, that's part
Or-
of it. Yeah, that
or is
little.
it just the first and second story that you are referring to?
No, it's really both. So on the first story, I would love for that cast stone material to extend 3 bays all the way over to the right. So all of the brown brick that's on that lower level to the right of the cast stone would all be part of that same, or at least designed in concert with it to feel like one facade. And then above that, the brick, that's the next 3 stories up, but stops at the patio. That's the part that really feels kind of stuck on the other facade. It feels like it's a metal panel building with a brick facade in front of it. So I would love to see that designed to be more kind of cohesive. And I don't necessarily feel like it needs that additional layer of brick in the front of it. To me, the change in material altogether is sort of a nice relief from the brick.
I see. Yeah, so
Were you also suggesting that the blonde brick building on the far right, on the south, be at this lower height or not?
Are you asking me that, or are you asking
Yeah.
Diana?
Wondering if you, I thought I heard that, but maybe not.
No, I think the lighter brick is fine standalone as long as it's kind of clear, it has kind of clear boundaries to make it feel like it's one
Okay.
building. That's what my intuition, but you may feel otherwise, yeah.
so blonde brick building on the side as we're looking, right side as we're looking at this slide. Levels 2 through 3, where it's the nutmeg color brick, maybe metal panel with cast stone below. So it is a corner building with the blonde brick building on the right, and then the South University facade broken up on the left.
Yes.
I think I've got your.
I think the one
I know that
question,
yeah.
I think the one question with that though is, and this is obviously, getting some thoughts is obviously as we went through this on the 13-story building, is we wanted to make the corner the prevalent piece. So if we do that, if we extend that cast stone further down south along East University, and we make these changes, does that take away from this central aspect right now of this corner piece like it's shown right now? Obviously we're taking all these feedbacks, and that corner was one that was a lot of conversation. And I think even when we went to planning and council, there was additional feedback. So I just want to make sure if we don't take away from that, if that's a desire as well.
Yeah, and I would simply answer that if the material extended across, but maybe there's more richness of detail or the grander proportions at the corner, as opposed to a change in material. It doesn't necessarily have to be the exact same design that extends that whole way, but it would be designed as one building with a special moment at the corner. Does that make sense?
I'm gonna hope Diane understands it as the architect. I'm a contractor and a civil guy, so a civil engineer. So
This is my
I don't
language.
use the arts side of my brain. I don't use very much.
I can picture Lori's sketch. I know what she's saying.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay.
Amber?
Could I just briefly summarize what I heard? What I heard Lori say is that the brick facade on the west elevation south of the tower appears to be stuck on. That she would like to see a more cohesive treatment of this portion of the facade, particularly as it wraps its way around the tower at the corner. Lori, am I missing any critical element of what you wanted to say?
I think that's generally a correct statement. And if you were saying it was only the lower levels, I wasn't clear on the first part. It would be all of the floors, unifying the corner tower with the rest of the portion south of it, south of the tower. That doesn't help. That doesn't clarify anything. That's not more confusing than what you said.
All the floors on the west elevation,
up to the blonde or brick color, yeah.
Up to blonde brick, be more cohesive?
Yeah, I think unified as one facade would be maybe.
Okay. Unified as one facade.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
And Gary?
My impression is that you're suggesting that the breakdown of the building facades all the way around is pretty clear, and so it appears like a series of buildings, but then in the one section, it does not appear that way. It appears that this has kind of been overlaid on top of the corner building in a sense. And so you're saying maybe the expression should be more like the corner on the upper floors and similar materials to the lower floor corner on the lower two floors. Guess that wasn't very clarifying.
That was well put. Thanks,
Bill?
Gary.
Okay, if I could, as the non-architect on this, my initial impression was that that corner, what was being done there was in response to many of the comments we had earlier, that it needed to have some kind of focus in coming out of the engine arch. I'm not sure we need to put a statue any place in the world anymore, but that was a joke. But something that catches your eye there. I read this, and again, this is my amateur eye, that to the right and left in this perspective, there's the same brick, the same style. That to me reads as a building with the corner being the feature entry to that building. I guess I'd have to see what it would look like to extend the light stone to the right without going to the left. Right now, both those pieces, you got 3 window pieces at the second level, we'll call it 3 window pieces to the left, 3 to the right. They're for the most part identical. So it reads to me as there's the building, and here's the corner that we've been asking for. So I'd welcome somebody to dispossess me of that thought. But anyway, this is a little bit contrary to what Lori was saying, but that was my first impression that's how it reads. Maybe that everybody else doesn't view it that.
So Dick, Bill, what I heard you say was that you felt that based on previous conversations that there was an emphasis of the corner needing a real focal point. And you indicated to the right and left of the corner, it reads with a similar style in terms of brick color and all that. And you felt that it reads as a single building now.
Well, that was, and again, that's just, I don't want to be contrary to Lori, but on the point and counterpoint, that was my first take. It looks like at the 2-story street height elevation, that here is the building and here is the focal point corner of that building. Upper isn't exactly the same, but I'm focusing on the 2-story corner piece and how it relates to each side of it.
Yeah, I think my challenge on that was just simply the proportion of it didn't feel like a complete building. One thing I would say maybe, Jeff, in summary would be that any unification of that facade would want to still maintain a strong hierarchy of emphasis on the corner. And the detail, the canopy, all of those things are still very rich and distinctive on the corner as kind of that gateway moment.
Or put Bill's clock on the building.
Lucy
Still
asked.
trying to get that in. I'm going to jump in now. I guess I agree with both all the comments that have made so far. I think that I really appreciate the work that's been done on this since the last design. I was going through the design guidelines and I started, just trying to write down when ones that met it was meeting, and it was like, well, it's meeting almost every guideline. So I've stopped making a list, but just a lot of breaking it up into smaller modules, a really nice rich palette of materials, very clear entries, without using a huge gesture. It's just very obvious where the entries are. I agree. I'm very much appreciate the work on the corner. I am concerned about extending that. I think so that way I agree with what Bill was saying. That is, if you think about that as a three-dimensional object, it's open underneath and it's got a room above it. It's closed in. So to extend that same material down this east U, I would get concerned that it just doesn't look as authentic as the corner. I see that as being a very distinct corner piece. I do agree with Lori, though, that there is some, what's the opposite of clarity? Non-clarity with the kind of how those buildings come into it on either side. And I wish actually that stone could actually come out a little, so it actually protrudes in front of some of the brick on either side, so that it was a very distinct piece. I agree with Lori of some of that east facade. I actually don't have any great suggestions of what to do with it. I feel like it is a little bit more slapped on, and I think maybe it's the glass tower going up behind it. The other place where I see that is on the north facade at the east end. The facade goes kind of just a little bit past the stone there, which seems a little odd. And I remember in the 13-story design, there was another little piece there as well that was kind of odd. So I don't know if that's something coming from the plan or what, but
Pull up that facade to, if we could see that street view, Kristen. The north facade at the east side, kind of where the student entry.
page
is.
23. Oh, what's it? Oh, I have a different, no, it's a different presentation. I don't know what page it is. So.
Probably a few slides after this one.
Did you
Also,
say,
while we're here, I really appreciate that
Here it is.
view, showing the view through the archway. I appreciate that being included. That's very nice. I think she's looking for the actual elevation, right?
Well, this is
Oh, okay. All right.
so the next slide, I think, is the east side of the north elevation. And I just wanted to make sure I understood your comment, Tamara.
No, not that corner.
Okay, then I was in the wrong.
The main stone corner facing.
Oh,
the
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah, maybe just go to the last slide. I think that's
The last slide.
the one that shows the majority of the
20.
building. Okay.
Okay, is this where we want it to be?
I think so.
Okay.
I think that would help to explain your comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. There we go.
That little sort of flatter brick piece that overlaps.
Just to the left of the tower.
The tower.
Mm.
And actually, I think that actually may help even the transition to the glass, but I don't know if it could be pulled back one bay. It seems like it's just sort of bleeding onto the tower there.
Like the brick is reaching over.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But I guess just looking at this view, I do, I think using that stone elsewhere is gonna diminish its strength.
Yeah, Gary?
You use the stone again in a similar way, but without the same depth on Church Street on the alley. If you look at the elevation, which is west elevation, slide 19. So down there in the bottom left, you've got a similar tower and a similar expression at the first two floors.
Right, where it wraps the corner.
Yeah, I guess we don't have a perspective of that, but I just noticed that. I just wanted to comment that on the reverse corner from the main front, you've repeated the same kind of vocabulary.
I think that is the northwest corner we keep looking at. We do use the stone surrounding some of the retail entry elements, but then wrapped in brick as well. If you're looking kind of at the middle of this elevation between the 38-foot dimension and the 33-foot dimension.
Yes.
And then the stone opening at the left is the northwest corner of the building that we've been focusing on.
And you have a similar transition from the medium terracotta brick to the tower, but you don't have that step in it like you do on the main corner.
And then if we go quickly to that last slide again, Kristen. I appreciate this. I think we were seeing on that west elevation, the one bay of that stone arch at the main corner of the building.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, I think it's not that I'm saying I think you shouldn't use it anywhere else in the building, but just in this manner, it seems, I know this is elsewhere it's used more of an accent to portray entries, which I think is appropriate. Is there, I guess that the other comment I had, which I just want to make sure was clear, was that, is there any, you've got the brown brick kind of sticking out farther, and then the corner set back a little, and then the light colored brick is also set back. Is there any way you could reverse that?
Right, so we could look at reversing that so that the stone element is the one that protrudes out past the brick to make it more prominent, I think is what you're going for.
I think it would also help with that well, I think it would help with it not, I actually think the brown brick looks, the way it's designed is quite nice. It's got a nice rhythm and nice detailing to it, but it would end a little differently then. It would end between two things instead of protruding out in front of them.
Tamara, could I briefly summarize what I heard you say?
Yes.
What I think I heard you say. I heard that you thought the entries were clear. You appreciate the work on the corner. You're a little worried about extending some of the material to the south, that it might reduce some of the authenticity. You agree with Lori that it lacks clarity on each side, that it should have more distinct elements. The brick portion that Lori had mentioned appears slapped on. You also mentioned that the north facade on the west side, east of the tower, immediately east of the tower, might be rethought.
That's part of that clarity comment. That's really part of the same thing.
Okay. And I also heard you say that using the stone element or using stone elsewhere might diminish its strength. I also heard you say that reversing the stone with the brick might help on those particular sections. And then I think I heard Diane say that could be done.
Or looked at, yeah. I think the only thing I just make sure is clear is I don't think that, I think stone can certainly be used throughout the project, but just in that it's used elsewhere more as a accent, to be used as the main materials. I think that's nice that that's the one element that where that happens. Yes, and otherwise, yes, that sounded clear. Thank you.
Yeah. Corey or John or Jeff, do you have any comments? John?
I like the changes. Compared to the last iteration that we saw, in terms of, like Tamara was saying, I see a lot more of the elements addressed that we in our checklist, and it definitely has much more of a viable and interesting streetscape for pedestrians, and I think it's a much needed aspect to that part of town.
Thank you. John? Oh, John, you're on mute.
Bill, go ahead. You had something to say, I think.
Sure. Okay. So my question is related to potential signage. Are there will there be restrictions on how signage can be used, particularly on the corner? I could envision somebody that had that corner entrance wanting a channel neon letters spelled out the name of whatever the company is, sitting on top of that projected awning. I'm not saying I'm for, against, or whatever, but will there be architectural restrictions that would keep the cohesiveness of the design visible, as opposed to a lot of signage that would be allowed? I know the owner would like to have it something that's tasteful, but I don't know whether you're planning to have some kind of examples of signage on this that would be available for people to take a look at.
Yeah, so Bill, we haven't really gotten that far, but typically with all of our buildings, we do standardized signage requirements. We really only deviate from that sometimes in regards to like a national chain like SoulCycle. When they came in on Vic North, they had a unique aspect of what they had to do because of branding, but we still work with them to get certain things that we needed. So we typically don't do like neon signs, things along those lines. So we do standardize. So these are great comments for that. I'll be honest, I don't think we fully thought about at that corner space that'll allow us to go back to ownership and talk a little bit more about that. But yeah, I think we will be, on that corner, whatever we do, it's not going to be, hey, you can just put all kinds of signage there. Whatever we do will be tasteful in some form or manner. But I don't, outside of that, I don't have a full answer. So.
As long as I have the floor, one other question. A staff comment was about the concern about the windows that have two-tone brick and a metal panel. I don't object to that, but was that, Jeff, did you make those comments or
Yeah.
what? Okay, could you explain a little bit more your thought? I don't see.
Yeah. We've seen one or two buildings around town. I think the Varsity might be an example where designers will bring a darker tone on one side or more of a window that might convey a sense of a larger window. And I thought that that's what's happening. That's what was being proposed in this case, that, glazing is expensive and it might give the impression of a larger opening when in fact it's just a darker brick tone.
And I think that brick and metal panel infill was used to differentiate it from the blonde brick building windows, and to introduce kind of a sense of playfulness and getting different materials up there, so it's not just a nutmeg brick facade. And the windows themselves are probably sized appropriately for a bedroom window. So I wouldn't want to necessarily make larger windows, but I think the idea is to create a different type of articulation at the window. And I was really looking forward to comments from the board as to how they felt that was successful or not successful.
I've never, interestingly enough, I've never thought about that being a way for a builder to lessen the size of the windows. I really like what the effect is on the Varsity. I think that was the first time I'd ever seen that, and to me it makes it look like the window is set deeper in, which is often something more expensive to do, to get a deeper shadow line at the windows, and which we always encourage because it can make such a difference in the facade. But I think that is can be very effective in providing a little bit more of that variation and that shadow, that whether it's a real shadow line or not, that's it breaks up the facade, I think, really nicely.
Now, I don't want to be recorded as objecting to that. I wanted some discussion of it. I think it looks fine too. I just wanted to hear.
John?
Yes. I like the project, Diane. I'm kind of the oddball here. I'm the liaison of the Art Commission. So the city's invested over $2 million in public art, and the university is really heavy in public art. And so my task is to try to encourage developers to add public art or include public art. And I must say, I really like your building. I think it's sculptural. It's a gateway piece. And I like the way you've softened the mass by making it the appearance of more than one building. I like that. But I agree with Lori that one sort of piece on the maybe the third to the fourth story looks stuck on, and I think that corner seems to me a little muddled. But that's not a comment from an architect. It's to look at the whole building as kind of sculptural. I do want to sort of applaud your pedestrian connections between, I think, Church and East University. You're going to hopefully try to incorporate some murals there. I think that's an excellent idea. I would encourage you to try to use local artists. They're, the Art Center, Destination Ann Arbor. There are a number of folks that can help with that. Mary Thiefels is a local muralist. And you might want to think about kind of Instagrammable type of art. I think there's an example of that on Tower Plaza, and students really like that kind of thing where they can, take a photograph of them in some kind of wings or whatever. Be a little more creative than that, though, I hope. In addition, that I believe that on that corner that we are all talking about, and Bill pointed out that that's that drama of it, and I really think that Lori's suggestion would add to that drama, that you have a small urban open space on that corner, and to kind of really activate that corner. And I would encourage you to think about a possible small sculpture gallery there, maybe a rotating gallery, just one piece, but local artists could kind of make it through there. I think that would help in addition to kind of activate that space. But I like it. I'm impressed with it. Well done.
So real quick, in regards to, murals and everything, so we actually own where the old Borders bookstore was at. So the mural that's right there between Potbellies and what was formerly Snap or Pyology, there's a mural that is on that wall, which we actually did work with Mary on actually doing for us. So one of the things that we find is helpful when we do that is it does help with graffiti. That was primarily one of the driving factors of why we did that, was we got a lot of graffiti on that wall, and when an artist does it, there's a tendency not to do graffiti. So those would definitely be things that we look at as we move forward.
That's a great idea, and spread the word. Some people believe that murals invite graffiti, and actually the research is quite the contrary.
Yep, I don't think I've ever seen, since we did that, graffiti on our building or on the rest of it, like Ant Alley down there where First Martin's building is, where Barracuda's at. So,
well done, Sean.
thank you.
Anyone else comment?
Just
Yeah, Gary's hand go up.
I just wanted to say that we've had a lot of comments and so forth, and possible changes. I think the whole board, believes that the design is well done. I think we're all pretty happy with it. I don't think anybody would be disappointed if changes weren't made and you built this building, but I would like to applaud you on the attention to detail and the window openings and all the buildings and care that you've taken with that. So just to end on a positive note. Thank you.
Thanks. And I've got a few comments. I agree with Tamara. I went through the guidelines too and stopped because I could see the petitioner had read them and was trying really hard to follow the guidelines. Things like expressing the street wall and varying cornice heights and reveals that are deep, that show volume, varying the color. And those are all things that we wrote into the guidelines to try to enable a large building maintaining the rhythm that exists downtown now. And I think this building does that really well. So I think you did a great job of looking at the guidelines. The corner, I think I was the main one talking about the corner the last time and what view is framed by that arch at the engineering building. And I understand Lori's hesitancy. I like the fact that it is different than the rest of the building. And at the same time, I really like that it's asymmetrical. 2 bays wide on the north facade and only 1 bay on the west. I think that adds an element of interest to it. So I appreciate that. And I like it at the pedestrian level where it becomes porous. There's just a column at the corner and you can walk through the corner. And as you're a pedestrian heading down either street toward the corner, you can see through to see who's coming at a right angle cue. And it's really a good visual cue and helps pedestrians. So I think that was a thoughtful thing that you didn't have the first time around. And lastly, I too think Tamara said this, like the punched openings, the way they're treated. I think the building on Huron did do a successful job of that. In pretty massive wall plane, it just creates a better proportionality to the what is perceived as a window opening to the overall wall. And I think it's successful. So to me, I think you nailed it and did a really nice job. And all the comments are good ones. There's some tweaking that you could do in response to any of them, but this is a real strong project and you did a nice job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, Jeff, now
Okay,
what do we say?
let's, everybody loved it. Let me go through each of the comments as best I can. Thank you for helping clarify my notes as we went. Lori indicated that brick facade on the west elevation south of the tower appears stuck on, would like to see more cohesive treatment of this, more richness of material at the corner, all floors unifying on the west elevation up to the blonde brick, be more cohesive or unified as one facade. Lori also, a few minutes later, indicated that any unification of the facade should make sure the corner element remains pronounced. Bill spoke about the corner needed to have some kind of focus to the right and the left of the corner, same style. Reads as a single building with a focal point at the northwest corner, which I think he appreciated. Tamara indicated that the entries are clear and she appreciated that. She appreciated the work on the corner, worried about extending the same material to the south along the corner, that it might reduce the authenticity of that section of the facade somewhat. Tamara agreed with Lori with regard to that section lacking some clarity on each side of the facade. Should have distinct elements. Brick portion looks slapped on. Also, the north facade on the west side, east of the tower, I think lacks some clarity, and using stone elsewhere diminished some of the strength. Gary indicated that it might make sense to reverse the brown brick and the stone element with that should be considered.
I'm not sure I said that.
Maybe it wasn't Gary. Maybe, you know what? That was a continuation of Tamara, I think.
Okay.
Let me scratch that. Thank you, Gary, for pointing that out. Corey indicated that she acknowledged that a number of elements issues were addressed that were on your checklist. She also appreciated viable streetscape elements. John had a question, which was with regard to the amount of signage that can be used. Sean addressed that. Bill.
I don't think that was John regarding sign.
Yeah, that was Bill.
That was
Bill.
Bill.
Bill
Yeah.
on sign.
Bill on sign. Thank you. I also think Bill, maybe it was Bill, asked about the window treatment, or his opinion was that the window treatment looked fine. Tamara also supported the shadow line that the petitioner was proposing. John agreed with Lori regarding the west facade element the west facade treatment, and applauded the petitioner's potential for murals on the east elevation. And John generally liked the building. Gary also liked the building, and particularly with its attention to detail. Dick had a few comments. He indicated the petitioner clearly read the guidelines and was trying to adhere to them. With regard to the corner, he understood Lori's hesitancy. He appreciated the symmetry, and at the pedestrian level,
The asymmetry.
Appreciated the asymmetry.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Jeff, while you're paused, I also recommended local artists. For the
Okay.
murals, if you could include that.
Thanks, John.
Local artists.
With regard to Dick's comments, he said he understood Lori's hesitancy. He appreciated the asymmetry, and at the pedestrian level, he appreciated the fact that pedestrians who are approaching the corner, both from the south and from the east, will be able to sort of see each other as they get to the corner, that the corner is going to be more open. He liked the punch openings of the windows, and he thought it created better proportionality. That's my summary.
So our thinking was that we might prioritize these, but we could also choose to just accept this as feedback for the applicant of the items we said in their totality. I don't, unless someone feels there are a number of items that should jump to the top.
I
Bill,
think it's kind of clear that the main piece is the corner and some clarity, whether it's, you know, extended or pushed or pulled or left alone. It's more clarity to it, I think.
Okay. Do others
That's-
agree we should move that toward the top?
I'd say that would be the
Okay.
biggest
Great.
piece.
Jeff, I saw your hand go up. I'm sorry.
The thing that I maybe didn't hear in Jeff's summary was Tamara's suggestion that the corner element project in front of instead of sitting behind the elements on each side. And so I didn't want that to get lost, because that's one that I really would encourage the designers to take a look at. I just didn't hear it in Jeff's summary, so I might have missed it.
So I think we go Bill, then Gary.
Well, my comment was exactly the same as Jeff's. I wasn't sure that was settled on, but I think that Tamara had brought up the thought of pushing the brick to the north and, or to the, I'm sorry, to the east and south of that corner back, rather than having it stand proud of the corner. And I'm not sure there was ever finality that was agreeable to the rest of the board. I think it would be a good idea, but it needs, as Jeff said, it needs to be clarified if that is the consensus.
Okay, then Gary, then Lori.
Okay.
I just wanted to add something that I forgot to say, is that I really appreciate the fact that the back of the building, the south elevation, is all brick. And so many of these projects, we see alternate materials, less expensive materials on the backs of buildings that have quite an impact seen from a distance. And while the back of this building is fairly plain as it needs to be, it does have rich materials. I think we appreciate that.
Lori?
I was just going to say, I think the comment that Jeff wrote about reversing the stone and the brick was about reversing the relief of them. Instead of having the brick be forward, it would be the stone. So maybe it's just clarifying that point to say that the cast stone would project farther in front of the brick instead of the current configuration.
So that's at least 4 of us, and I'd be 5 who favor that idea. Yeah, Jeff?
Quick question for Sean. Just out of curiosity, what caused you to reduce the scope of the project?
So, you know, obviously in light of a lot of things that have been taking place over the last several months, we started to evaluate, you know, the project a little bit more. What does it mean? I think we recognize that parking piece was going to be a very highly expensive piece of the project as well. So this is something that allowed to be, you know, a simpler project to move forward. So that's why we presented it. So.
Is there any potential to make the building higher in the future, adding on to it?
I don't think in the future we haven't designed for that, because obviously that brings in, you know, you don't know what your design requirements are going to be at that time. So we haven't designed it that way.
It would seem to me, or appear to me, that since you were working toward reducing costs, meaning that the underground parking being very expensive, that perhaps of the first and second level, that's probably all wood frame construction at this point. That seems to be the way to go.
Actually, it's going to be a light gauge system, so very similar to North, because what we were finding, you know, talking with the various GCs we were speaking with, is that the challenge is trying to find carpenters, and even still that still exists. And so they were saying, you know, our costs are actually almost the same by doing a light gauge system versus even carpentry, of just making sure, because one of them had a carpenter go out on a large project they were doing in Detroit, and it almost killed them on that project. So
thanks.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Some other business to do. You're welcome to stay on, but you can sign off too if you'd like.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Have a wonderful weekend.
The next item on the agenda is election of officers, which I didn't know was coming up. How should we proceed with that for Kristen?
Is up to you if you want to. Usually the term runs like late summer to late summer. I know you guys haven't had a meeting in a long time. If you want to postpone that to another meeting, so you can discuss it more, or it is a little bit up to you guys. If you want to vote this way, you can. If you want to postpone, you can too.
If I can be so bold, and you can vote me down, my suggestion is, and I would make the motion, that we re-elect the same officers as they are now, because so far they seem to be doing an acceptable job. There's been no hint of corruption, no graft, no citizen outcry. So my motion is we re-elect the same group.
I second that.
My check's in the mail.
Okay, any discussion on that? We have a motion. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Abstain? Okay, thank you.
Congratulations.
Yes, good job.
We have a second public commentary in case someone was watching, so I have a quick script I'm going to read. This is an opportunity for persons to speak for up to 3 minutes. To comment, please call 888-78-009 and enter the meeting ID of 912-5426-1114. City staff will select callers to have raised their hand one by one using the last 3 digits of your phone number. In order to electronically raise your hand to indicate your desire to speak, please press *9 on your phone. You will hear an automated announcement that the host is allowing you to speak. So should we give it a few minutes again?
Yeah, I think we should give it just a minute. There are no speakers at this time, but we'll wait just a quick second here. Okay, there are no speakers at this time.
So seeing no speakers, we'll close the public commentary and it's time to adjourn. Would someone like to move adjournment?
So
Tamara and Jeff seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Uh,
It's great to see everybody. Maybe we'll get together next month. Thanks.
Good job.
See you. Bye-bye.
Good job. Thank you.